Hey, hello! Welcome! My name is Sergio. I'm an English teacher, and today I'm going to make this tutorial related to pronunciation of regular verbs in the past. I think this is very important because mainly people who speak Spanish, whose mother language is Spanish, have a very difficult time pronouncing regular verbs in the past. So let's start. Let me give you an explanation and let me show you examples. And then if you have questions or if there is something you want to tell me, well, you're very much welcome to it. What are regular verbs? So remember we have irregular verbs. For example, see, the passive of see so, and the past participle is seen. For example, go, the past participle of go is gone, and the simple past is went. Those are verbs that are irregular verbs because the conjugation in the past changes. The verbs that form their past participle or that we use in simple past with the or ed at the end are regular verbs. Those are the verbs that we're going to be speaking today. Those are the verbs that we're going to be reviewing the pronunciation today. For the pronunciation, the pronunciation of regular verbs in the past has 3 different rules related to the final sound in the pronunciation of the verbs. So you're going to have to pay special attention to what happens to your throat. This is your throat. So for the rest of the class, I'm going to be asking you to touch your throat and feel the vibration of your vocal cords. Let's see rule number 1. If the last sound in the infinitive of the verb is a voiceless sound, you must pronounce the final ed as t. A voiceless sound is one in which the vocal cords don't vibrate. In this case, it's the sound that determines the group that a word belongs to, not the written letter. The voiceless sounds are P, K, S, CH, SH, F, X, or H. So I'm going to ask you to touch your throat and make the sound of the following letters. Let's make the sound of the P. What is the sound of the P? The sound of the P is P, 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 P. When you make the sound of the P, your vocal cords don't vibrate. Let's make the sound of the K. Which one is the sound of the K? When you make the sound of the K, the vocal cords, this part here, doesn't vibrate because you make the sound of the K with the upper part of your throat. Now, let's make the sound of the S. If you touch your vocal cords, what you make the sound of the S, there your vocal cords don't vibrate. Now, let's make the sound of the ch, of the ch. If you touch your vocal cords while you make the sound of the ch, or of the sh, your vocal cords here are not vibrating. Let's make the sound of the F. If you make the sound of the F and touch your vocal cords, you can feel that they do not vibrate. Now let's make the sound of the X. The sound of the X is a voiceless sound because when you make it, your vocal cords don't vibrate. Like calling the dog in Colombian, of course. And now, let's make the sound of the H. Which one is the sound of the H? The sound of the H is the sound of words like hospital, or hand, or hen. So the sound of the H is the sound of the J Latina. We say when you make the sound of the H, your vocal cords don't vibrate. Now, let's see some examples of verbs that finish in voiceless sounds And let's see how you pronounce them. And let's see how you pronounce them in the past. The following verbs, the verbs that you have in your screen, are verbs that finish in a voiceless sound. So for bake, we pronounce baked. Brush, the past is brushed. Cook, the past is cooked. Crush, the past is crushed. Dance, the past is danced. Dress, the past is dressed. Drop, the past is dropped. Escape, and the past is escape. As you can see, these verbs finish in voiceless sounds, so you pronounce the final ed as t. Finish, finished. Fix, fixed. Guess, guessed. Help, helped. Hike, hiked. Hope, hoped. Joke, joked. Jump, jumped. Kiss, kissed. Knock, knocked. Laugh, laughed. Lock, locked. Look, looked. Miss, missed. Mix, mixed. And pack, packed. That is the pronunciation of the first group of regular verbs in the past. That is the pronunciation following the first rule. Now, let's go with the second rule. This is the rule number 2. If the last sound in the infinitive of the verb is a voiced sound, you must pronounce the final ed as d. A voiced sound is a sound in which the vocal cords vibrate. It's the sound that determines the group that a word belongs to, not the written letter. Voiced sounds L, N, M, R, B, V, G, W, Y, and Z, vowel sounds or diphthongs. Let's pay special attention to the pronunciation of voiced sounds. Voiced sounds are sounds in which your vocal cords vibrate. Now, remember, voiceless sounds that we learned a little bit earlier were sounds in which your vocal cords were not vibrating, but in the examples we're going to see now, the vocal cords vibrate. Can we make the sound of the L? Do you know which one is the sound of the L? The sound of the L is L, 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 L. I say Lola, but the sound is L, L, L. Now, when you make the sound of the L and you touch your throat, you should see that your vocal cords are vibrating. L, L, L. Now, let's make the sound of the N. Which one is the sound of the N? If you touch your vocal cords, you're going to see that the vocal cords are vibrating. Which one is the sound of the M? So you can see that the vocal cords are vibrating while you make the sound. The sound of the R. Which one is the sound of the R? R, R. That's the sound of the R. You should feel that your vocal cords are vibrating while you make the sound. Remember that the sound of the R in Spanish is different to the sound of the R in English. We say, in Spanish we say carro, we say ropa, but in English we say R. It's different, the sound is different, and when you touch your throat while making the sound of the R, your vocal cords should vibrate. Now let's make the sound of the B. Ba, 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 ba. Like when we say banana, or when we say beast, or when we say big. In that case, when you make the sound, your vocal cords here should vibrate. Now the sound of the V. When we say Vivian, or when we say v, remember that the sound of the B, the small V, is made with your down lip and your teeth. So when you make the sound of the V, your vocal cords are vibrating. Now The sound of the G. For example, when you say belong, g g g g, or good, g g g g g, that the sound of the G makes your sound vocal cords vibrate. Now, which one is the sound of the W? Remember that in Colombiano, or when we speak Spanish, we say William, or we say Willington or Washington. It's very similar to the sound of the G, to the sound of the G with an U. William or Willington or Washington. But in English, the sound of the double U is the sound of the vowel ooh, ooh. You say Washington or you say William, and when you say it, when you pronounce it, you should feel that your vocal cords here are vibrating. Which one is the sound of the Y? The sound of the Y is the sound of words like yes, or yellow, or yesterday. How do you make the sound of the Y? You open your mouth and you smile. And you make the sound with your vocal cords vibrating. You say yes. You have to feel the vibration here. Yes. Yesterday. Yellow. You are going to make different sounds that start with the Y. Z, z. Which one is the sound of the Z? In Spanish, in Spain, for example, when you go to Spain, you can see that people pronounce the sound of the Z as Z. So they say zapato, but in English, the sound of the Z is a vibrating sound. So you make the sound of the Z, making your vocal cords vibrate. You have to touch your vocal cords, and they have to vibrate. The sound of the vibration of the cell phone. That is the sound of the Z. And in that case, your vocal cords vibrate. Remember that we have two types of sound. The first one is voiceless sound, in which your vocal cords don't vibrate. Then we have voiced sounds, in which your vocal cords vibrate, and that is the group that we are talking right now. Let me show you some examples of verbs that finished in voiced sounds and the pronunciation of their past. Advised finishes with the sound of the Z. That's why we pronounce the final ed as D. Advised. Agree, agreed. Allow, allowed. Answer, answered. Appear, appeared. Arrive, arrived. Believe, believed. Belong, belonged. These are verbs that finish in voiced sounds, and that is why we pronounce the final ed as D. Burn, and the past is burned. Call, and the past is cold. Carry, and the past is carried. Change, and the past is changed. Clean, and the past is cleaned. Close, and the past is closed. Cover, and the past is covered. Cry, and the past is cried. Damage, and the past is damaged. Describe, described. Die, died. Dry, dried. Earn, earned. Encourage is encouraged. And enjoy, enjoyed. Enter, entered. That is the second group of when you find regular verbs that finish in voice sounds, that is the pronunciation rule you have to follow. Let's see the next group. Rule 3. If the last sound in the infinitive verb is a T or a D, you must pronounce the final ed as id. It's the sound that determines the group that a word belongs to, not the written letter. The last rule and the last group of verbs is a much simpler group. Those are the verbs that finish in the sound of T or D. Let me show you some examples. For example, accept, and the past is accepted. Afford, afforded. Arrest, arrested. Attend, attended. Attended. Collect, collected. Contact, contacted. Count, counted. Decide, decided. These are verbs that finish in the final sound of T or D. We pronounce the final ed as ed. Defend, defended. Demand, demanded. Divide, divided. End, ended. Expand, expanded. Expect, expected. Export, exported. Flood, flooded. Graduate, graduated. Hate, hated. Hunt, hunted. Include, included. Invent, invented. Invite, invited. Land, landed. And need, needed. The final syllable. As you can see, the pronunciation of regular verbs in the past is much simpler than what it seems. We have only 3 rules. In the first rule, if the last sound of the infinitive is a voiced sound, you pronounce the final ed as T. In the second rule, if the final sound of the infinitive is a voiced sound, so remember, voiced sounds are the sounds in which your vocal cords vibrate. So if you have a voiced sound, you pronounce the final ed as D. But if the verb in infinitive finishes on T or D, you must pronounce the final ed as id. Review the examples, review the rules, and practice. Remember, the clue to have an excellent pronunciation of regular verbs in the past is practice. Practice, practice, practice. Thank you very much for your attention. See you in the future and enjoy pronouncing regular verbs in the past. Bye-bye.